Hey everybody, Aaron here, and this is my top 50 anime. Oh, it's about time. I've been waiting to do this. I had this thing all set up. I had to do some like last minute editing on it, but yeah, this is my top 50 anime. Now, I'm just gonna set some ground rules real fast, guys, because I know my subscribers right now aren't like this, but just in case anyone that watches this video later on or whatever, number one, these are my top 50, okay? You might not agree with some of them. You might say, oh, I don't think that's worth being on the top 50. That's your own thing. Listen, these are my top 50. This is my tastes, what I like about anime, what some of the stuff I like, some of the stuff I dislike is not here because honestly, if it's not worthy of being on the top 50, it's not going to be there, I mean, I'm going to start off with some honorable mentions because there are some that I felt were very close to being top 50, but they just didn't make the cut. It's not anything wrong. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. It's just that they're not there. And there's a lot of anime I've seen that have been on the top 50 in the past, but this is more so my recent updated list of top 50. This is the stuff that has stayed on the list or has moved on to the list somehow because of just how awesome it is. Also, the top, like, I want to say 40 don't really per se have an actual defined number. Like, just because it's dead last on the list doesn't mean it's worse than something else on there or better than something else. It just might be there because honestly it's easy for me to put down at the top 50. The last 10 though, like if the closer it gets to the 10, I should say, like when it gets to 20 or 15, think like those are the closest to being the top 10. That means that those were very close to being top 10, but they just missed the mark a little bit. So that means they're better. That's just kind of think of it like the top 25 essentially are going to be the better stuff, the stuff that I feel was way, way better. And, like, comment, subscribe, guys. It helps my channel out. Show some love for this. I'm putting a lot of work into this video. It took hours of finding the pictures for it, thinking of what was the kind of way I'm going to do this, setting the actual PowerPoint slide up, etc. So, show some love, guys, alright? So, without further ado, let's start this. Come on, top 50 anime. Alright, honorable mentions first. Like anything else, you need the honorable mentions. Let's start with Air and Aquarion. Air and Aquarion were very close to being in the 50s. And originally, I think Air was at the 50s. Aquarion sometimes dabbles being close to it, but it's never there. Air, if you haven't seen it, is an awesome story. I love it. It's honestly one of the most touching stories I've seen. But it just missed the mark a little bit because it's a show that does have some issues here and there. The last like 3 episodes are notorious for being the worst episodes of the show because of how weird they get. But it's a great show. Watch it if you haven't. Aquarion also just missed the mark a little bit. It could have been better. It's not that it's bad per se, but it has some issues with it pacing. And as good as it is, it's something that I can't feel like I can say it's on my top 50. It's been close there before, but it's not there. All right, start off with top 50. 50, Yozakura Quartet. If you've never heard of this anime, don't fret. A lot of people have never heard of this anime, and it pains me to say that. I love this anime. I think it's awesome. It's always been at the top 50, somewhere in there. It was higher at one point, but it kind of got pushed to the side as more anime I watched. It's just simply a story about like friends that actually are fighting demons that are trying to get into their world, and they all have powers. Like one's an exorcist, one's a martial artist, and it deals with a lot of like kind of slice of life elements. Excuse me. And it's just a fun show. It's not trying to be over the top or anything. It has some great action, great animation. The sound is okay. The dubbing's not bad. It's got some nice romance elements toward the end or half of the series, but it's a great show. Definitely check it out, Yozakura Quartet. And by the way, I'll put down in the description box the list. I'm going to actually write out the list for this, so don't worry. It'll say what they are for every part. So my first part will have 50 to 26. It'll have all those names of those shows, okay? In 49th, Black Lagoon. Black Lagoon is still one of my favorite shows. It's awesome. It sometimes gets pushed off the list sometimes, but then I think it's just that awesome. I have to put it back on the list. It's a very mature show, has a lot of great action, a lot of great storytelling, phenomenal animation, great dubbing. I love the dub for this. Japanese is okay, but I think the dub works a lot better for the show. Check it out if you haven't already. I plan on doing a review of it soon. Just like Yozakura Quartet, I'm going to do a review of that soon too. Number 48, Blue Gender. Blue Gender is a classic. I love Blue Gender. I think it's one of the better classics of anime. And it's one of the coolest things is that you can see where the time period skipped a little bit in terms of the animation style, because when the animation first started for this, it was very kind of Gundam-esque animation-wise. And then at one point, it gets a lot better in terms of animation. Like they add cell shading a little bit to it here and there. And you could tell where the money kind of budget went up, and also you could tell where the transition to the different style of anime came from. It's pretty cool. Blue Gender is a great humanity versus alien type anime. I love it. The movie sucks for it. Don't ever watch the movie because it's like just a rehash of the show, but done really poorly. Watch the show. It's an awesome show. Number 47, MS Mobile Suit 8th Team. Mobile Suit Gundam series in general always kind of deal with, one main protagonist and, them piloting a great super-powered robot. MS8 Team kind of just goes away from that series, where it actually has them focusing on regular soldiers piloting regular mobile suits like GMs, for example, or gun tanks. And it kind of just wants to delve into like their actual lives, what their focus is on, what they're dealing with as a unit. And I love the show. I think it's awesome. I think it's the best mobile suit, in my opinion. I'm sorry. I love this series because it has some great storytelling, great art, some nice romance elements toward the later half of the series and toward the middle part. I love the show. Definitely watch it. It's awesome. 46, Full Metal Panic. This is not the picture of the first season. I couldn't find a good one for the first season. This is the last season, second raid. But I'm saying right now, the first season's the best. Second one's just equally as good. Third one's meh. It's okay. Full Metal Panic is an awesome mecha type show, which doesn't really always deal with mecha. It actually has a lot more of comedic effects and action here and there. I think in God's truth, what's weird about the show is the first half of the first season deals with comedy, and then it goes to serious action, and the second season is all comedy, and the third season goes back to the roots of the first season. I think that's weird, but it's awesome. I love this show. It's still to this day one of my favorites in all time. It's never left the list of top 50. That's how great it is, okay? 45, Android Kikiader, the animation. Now, in vein of like things like Godzilla or shows like that, Android Kikiader used to be a actual real-time TV show where it had a guy dressed up in an android suit fighting off villains and such. What the animation did differently was it kind of made the story more about one main character, Jiro, who is a human at first, he thinks, but then realizes he's actually an android. And the show kind of just deals with the concept of what does it mean to be human? What is the concept of human? And I love this show. I think it delves into some very mature, dark themes, but it's awesome. The action's awesome. The animation's phenomenal. This show is very expensive to buy. So if you have to watch it, I'm warning you, you might have to use some sites that show anime. I'm not saying to use those. I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying to use them either, but you might have to. Because this show costs like $200 per every volume. I own the first 2 volumes because I got them when they first came out. But after that, I never bought them. And lo and behold, now they're almost impossible to get. Awesome show. Also, look up Jiro's theme for Android Kikiader in YouTube. It is one of my favorite background songs of any anime to this day. If I had to make a top 10 list, that song would be on the top 10 easily. Alright, 44, Paranoia Agent. Now, if you never heard of Paranoia Agent, don't feel too bad. It was a more kind of hidden gem in the 2000 series where it came out as this kind of psychological thriller type animation. It deals with the concept of a murderer killing people with a baseball bat on roller skates. But as the show progresses, you realize maybe not everything is as it seems. Maybe this killer is not a simple boy that is just killing people. Maybe it's something darker. And the show does some things with mystery and suspense that I have never seen in a show before. It's awesome. Definitely check out Paranoia Agent. 43, I know, is School Days. Everyone's going to hate me for saying School Days is my top 50. I don't care. School Days to me, because again, I'm a criminal justice major in school. I go to school for criminal justice. School Days is the peak of what could happen if a boyfriend-girlfriend romance goes sour. I mean, this is not something that's unheard of. People kill each other because a boyfriend slept with this girl, another girl, or vice versa. This is something that does happen in our real world. And that's why I hate when people say this is not realistic. It is realistic. This happens. This show is awesome. I love this show. I wish it was shown more love because I think as weak as the animation is sometimes for it and as weak as some elements of the story are, it's still a phenomenal take on kind of a dark, creepy tone story of just romance going bad. I like it. It's awesome. It's going to be on my top 50 for a longer while. Now, talking about depressing, scary anime, Corpse Party. I'm gonna actually take some time to explain Corpse Party. Corpse Party was actually a PC game that came out using RPG Maker a while back in like the 1990s. And it became this kind of cult phenomenon where people liked it because it was a very dark and creepy story. They made a PSP game a while back called Corpse Party Blood Covered, which was a very dark story about high school students who decide to kind of do a charm to kind of keep their friendship intact when one of them decides to move. But by doing the charm, they actually mess up the charm and actually end up in this world where it's a school that's in an alternate dimension. They get separated and they have to deal with this thing called the darkening, which is their psyche is actually eating against them because of how just depressing and lonely this place is. And also they have to worry about ghosts and creatures and such like that. It's an awesome, awesome anime. It is, I'm putting warnings out. Warning to everyone, this is a very mature, explicit anime. This has some horrifying scenes. Please note that. I'm just warning you now. This is for mature audiences. If you've never seen this, look up how mature and graphic this show can be, because it is very bad. But it's an awesome show. I love it. I think it's just hits that mature rating just perfectly. 41 is Nadesico. I hit my camera. I'm sorry about that. 41 is Nadesico. And I love Nadesico. It's a classic mecha type show. I love the characters of it. They're all fun. They're all kind of giddy towards each other. They work really well. The animation was very simple and minimalistic, but it was awesome. Personally, Nadesico is, I think, the quintessential of what a mecha could do with characters. I mean, it focuses more on the characters than the mecha combat or anything like that. This is an awesome show. Check it out. The movie's okay. I'm not condoning the movie's bad or anything, but it's not as good as the show. At 40, Shiki. Shiki is awesome. I love Shiki. The whole concept of the vampires is awesome, but when it's done like in the old day style of vampires, where the whole concept is older style vampires, that's the main point of the show. It just works so much better for a show. It makes it so much more interesting. I love this show. Definitely top 40. 39, Tora-Dora. Tora-Dora was a great romance story when I saw it. I've watched this show maybe 3 or 4 times over the course of my life. I love it. It's honestly a great story. It has some great humor to it. Has some kind of darker themes to it in terms of romance. And, you know, just the concept of accidental romance done really well. Because, I mean, the main character liking another girl, but then ended up with the other girl at the same time. Or, excuse me, after the fact. I thought it was always a very heartwarming story because that's what happens sometimes, you know. Everything is not always simple in love, and this show personifies that. At 38, Zero of Familiar of Zero, excuse me. I said that backwards, I'm sorry. The Familiar of Zero is not the best harem anime out there. It's not the best anime in general, I think. But what I feel about the show that does well in every respect is that it knows what its audience is for, and it hits some of the greatest notes in terms of storytelling, action, you know, romance, comedy. It's a fun show. I love it. It's definitely worth 38. At 37, welcome to the NHK. Take a character who thinks everything is okay in his life and then immediately strip that and make him paranoid of everything, and you have welcome to the NHK. Our main character, Sato, is the guy who lives inside of his apartment as a recluse because he thinks that the NHK, which is actually a Japanese broadcasting company, he thinks they're after him. And so he becomes so reclusive that he doesn't even want to set foot outside of his apartment. And as the story progresses, he kind of has to deal with this dark theme of suicidal concepts, just loneliness, where romance stands in his life, and manipulation. I think this show is very mature, and I love it. I think it's a great show that if you watch it, you'll understand a lot of these concepts. And, you know, I think at one point in your life, you end up somewhere in the line of this concept. I mean, like, for example, Sato becomes a gamer at one point, and he gets, like, hooked into a world of just MMOs. And I think I remember that from my, like, teenager years where I loved MMOs for a little while, and I was playing them nonstop. It happens, you know, that's what I love about the show, that it shows a realistic element of what could happen. I mean, a lot of these elements are things that happen to people in general. And so that's why I love this show. Moving on, 36. Shuffle! Shuffle is a series that I know is well known at the same time. I don't think it's well known enough. I think Shuffle needs to be always on people's top 100 watched anime, because this show is awesome. Again, it's a harem show. I have a few out here, I know that. But it's a harem show done very right, because it's not so creepy. It's not like all the girls are vying for the guy's affection solely because they're just there for the hell of it. There's a reason for it. And as the show progresses, I think the dark tones of the story, the characters, you know, their fatal flaws as people, shows up. and it shows up very well. Shuffle, I recommend watching. I don't recommend watching the sequel per se, because the sequel kind of is like a rehashing events. I hate it, but I love the first season. I've seen the show like a dozen times. It's awesome. 35 is Golden Time, which actually is a newer anime, like one of the few ones on here that's actually relatively new. Golden Time was awesome. I watched this recently, and I loved every moment of it. It had a few weak episodes, but overall, the romance done in the show is very realistic in terms of, falling in love with the person you didn't think you'd fall in love with, and just kind of having to deal with a relationship when you don't know yourself. And that's why, I know the amnesia kind of trope in anime is always done in a stupid way, but in this one, it's done in a very good way, because it's almost as a symbolism concept. I mean, think about the concept of you not knowing yourself, or when is it mean to actually know yourself? What does it mean? Do you actually know everything about yourself? Do you know your weaknesses and your strengths? Our main character has none of that initially, and he's just going off of kind of his own basic instincts. And it works for the show. It's a lot of fun. I love the show. I think the romance elements are great. I think the story's great. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. Fooly Cooly. Come on, do I need any introduction to Fooly Cooly? It is a weird, psycho anime that I love. I've always loved Fooly Cooly. It's only like 6 episodes long. It is still, to my day, I think, always in my top 50. It dropped, I think, considerably since I first watched it. But I still say this is an awesome anime that everyone needs to watch. Don't ask me what it's about, because, honest to God, I don't think people that watch this series verbatim know what it's about. It's just a crazy, crazy show. I love it. Awesome. Check it out. Attack on Titan, also another show, doesn't need very much recognition, because, everyone knows about Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan is on here not because of, per se, of the story. I think the animation for this show is phenomenal. I think the concept is phenomenal. Yeah, the story's a little wonky here and there, and, this is why I said earlier why I didn't have this thing in specific order, per se, because the show would probably be lower on the list. But I love Attack on Titan. I think it's a great show. I think the subject material is awesome. I think the concept of it is very unique and different. And that's something you don't see very often in anime nowadays. And this show did it very well. Not the best show around, but an awesome show regardless. Death Parade. I reviewed this, I think, when I first transitioned from my kind of tripod mentality. That's when I first transitioned to actually filming the screen per se. Death Parade is an awesome, awesome show. I think it deals with death and reincarnation better than any other show out there. It's, just dark enough to be interesting. It's also just lighthearted enough to be heartwarming. In that, the whole concept is when your life's on the line, what are you willing to do? And, people always say, and I said this multiple times in other videos, but people always say, I would do this if someone's life was at stake, or I would do this. You don't know that until your life is actually in that critical moment, because that's just how we are. We're preserving concept of humanity. We want to survive. We want ourselves to survive first and foremost over other people. There are selfless people out there, but that's a concept that you have to learn you have when the moment strikes. That's something that I've learned in the past, that how far are you willing to go to save your own hide? And it's just something that when you realize it, and Death Parade does that in a way that I think is awesome. I think this show is phenomenal. Check this out. It's a great, great show. Come on, Death Note. You knew that Death Note was going to be on this list somewhere. Honestly, Death Note is a show that I got my dad into watching it, and he loved it. And my dad doesn't watch a lot of anime. He watches some stuff, like he watched Attack on Titan, and he's watching Parasite right now. But he doesn't watch very much anime unless I highly recommend it to him. And even then, he's kind of hesitant because he hates certain things about anime. He loved Death Note because Death Note is a phenomenal anime. I'm saying that word phenomenal a lot, but honestly, this is, I think, perfect for this list, because a lot of these shows, for me, are deserving to be on this list. Death Note definitely deserves to be on this list. The whole concept of what happens when you have too much power. Does your good intentions become dark intentions in the long run? It delves into that and explains those concepts. And I think it does it in a perfect way. Death Note is a little weak in the beginning, but once it picks up speed, it doesn't stop. It's always just great, great, great episodes. Definitely awesome. Check it out if you haven't. I'm surprised if you haven't by this point. Code Geass. Code Geass, I was going to put higher on this list, but I'm like, you know what? It's not it's not for me. It's not going to be much higher than this because as great as this show is, it's not top 25 for me. It was there at one time when I was younger because I love this show. I've binge watched the show not once but like 3 times in my life. It's a great show. I mean, the whole Lelouch as a character is awesome. He's almost like Light, which is why I think they're so close in terms of ratings, because it's just the concept of where's your good intentions become bad ones. And our main character, who has great intentions, becomes dark because he makes mistakes. He's human. You have, great intentions aren't always come off as good intentions. They sometimes come off as bad ones in the long run. This show deals with that concept perfectly, even better than sometimes the Death Note. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. Waiting in the Summer, 29. Waiting in the Summer is something I watched only not even a year ago, and honestly, it made me bawl. I cried so hard watching the show. I cannot convey that enough. I cried. It had a phenomenal ending. All the episodes were nice because the romance elements were just perfectly put into the show. It wasn't like, oh, here we go, let's just throw the romance at the character right away. No, it built up steam until the point where characters fell in love with each other, and they weren't flawless characters. They didn't have their perfect romances. It was a flawed romance, but it was done so well. I love this show. I highly recommend checking this out. It's only 12 episodes long. Go watch it. Go watch it. You'll enjoy it. If you don't cry watching the show, you're emotionless. I don't know what to tell you. Full Metal Alchemist 2003, not Brotherhood. I dislike Brotherhood. I don't hate it, but I dislike it. Full Metal Alchemist, the original one, 2003 version, was awesome. It had some great storytelling. It had some great concepts of dealing with death and what you actually are willing to do to bring someone back to life, and what mistakes people make and how that affects people on the greater scheme. How willing are you to sacrifice other things for what you need? This show is awesome. I love the animation for it. I love the storytelling. I love everything about the show. It's just highly, highly recommend if you haven't watched it. I don't know why you haven't at this point, but go watch it if you haven't. You need to see the show. Come on. It's an old show. Watch it by now. Most likely, most of you have seen it before. But xxxHolic, something I see on a lot of people's lists, but I don't ever see them talking about it, and that's a shame. xxxHolic is a freaking amazing, amazing show. I love xxxHolic. I love the manga for it, but honest to God, this show is just so great because of the animation style, the visuals. I mean, look at that animation right there. Look at that visual effect. That is how this whole show looks, and I think it works so well. I think the concept of, a character kind of falling into this place where it's a store that only certain people need to see, I think that's interesting and unique. I think the whole show is very unique. It's done by Clamp, which I think does amazing work already as it is. I mean, they make Chobits. Chobits was awesome, etc. Tsubasa was awesome. They make some great work, and this is conveyed in this show. Definitely worth checking out. And this is where I'm going to stop for today, Spice and Wolf. If you've never seen Spice and Wolf, shame on you. You need to watch Spice and Wolf. Spice and Wolf I consider a great concept because it deals with both romance and money. I mean, the whole concept is our main character is a traveling merchant, and he goes around trying to make a dime, and he plays the game of what makes money, what is selling well, and what's not selling well. And this whole show plays on that in a way that I love. I think this show is phenomenal. I love the animation for it. I love the romance, the story, the visuals, the sound, the dubbing. I think is way better than the Japanese dub. I'm sorry. I think it's awesome. Definitely check this out. Alright guys, that's where I'm stopping for today. Well, not today, but stopping for part 1, I should say. Part 2 is coming out probably in the next hour. I hope you guys like this. Rate, comment, subscribe. Helps me out. And until the next part, I'll talk to you guys then. Have a good one.